see if I can forward this here. Jeffrey Bezos has talked about passion, and he's talked about the fact that passion comes from the heart. It doesn't come from the fact that you're going to become famous or you're going to make a lot of money. And a lot of times people get caught up in the hot passion of the day. And one of the interesting examples of this is that when I was a postdoc at Harvard, everybody wanted to have, all the students wanted to have internet companies. And so there was this huge wave of students who were leaving university. They were starting internet companies. And since I have a background in technology, I found it rather interesting that people were studying art history, or they were studying biochemistry, or any sort of they could be studying science, they could be studying sociology, they could be studying Chinese. They all wanted to start internet companies because they felt that they would make a lot of money. But they knew nothing about technology. None of them, whereas I had a master's in electrical and computer engineering. So, and I also had my own startup company that I founded with several professors when I was at Harvard. So I was very sort of familiar with what was involved in creating and designing software. And so I found it kind of fascinating that here they were all caught up in this idea that they were going to become millionaires at age 25. And of course, most of their companies all collapsed because they had no idea what they were doing. And they also, many of them, so I would talk to them and say, well, how's your company going and what are you doing, etc. And many of them, had no idea how technology worked. And also, as you all know, as engineers, you need this extreme attention to detail. And they also, were not used to that in many cases. And many of them found it tedious, and they didn't really enjoy doing it because, of course, when you're writing software, you have to be very careful that you don't miss any details. So that was kind of being caught up in the hot passion of the day. And it was also because they wanted to make money and fame. But Jeffrey Bezos talks very much about your passion. You have to follow what comes with you from your heart, because that really gives you the energy, and that gives you the type of commitment that money and fame can't bring you. So he talks about it as being this burning inner desire. And I always think of it as kind of this burning desire to express what is best in you. And the other thing that's interesting about what Jeffrey Bezos says is that it chooses you. You don't choose it. In other words, you can, in many cases, look back when you were a child and you can see what your passion was and what you really liked to do when you were a child. And I think that pretty much also stays with us. So I thought it was interesting looking at Mrs. Alakija, who talks about, when she talks about her businesses and developing her oil business and other businesses, her printing business, she talks about that she doesn't do any business. She doesn't choose to start a business unless she feels an extreme passion for it. In other words, it comes from inside her. It's not always necessarily some practical idea to start that type of business and say, well, this is the type of business today that will make a lot of money, or this sort of thing. And she talks about her printing business and how she wants to really do great printing, or she wanted to produce great fashion. And this idea of kind of perfecting it and making it perfect and making it great is, I think, closely connected to doing something that you have passion about. I know for myself that I'm very passionate about writing, and I spend probably far too long perfecting my writing, maybe than is economically feasible. But it's because I really want it to communicate to people. I really want people to hear what I'm saying. I want it to be meaningful for their lives. And it may not be economically practical. And I certainly ran into this in my last book that I'm working on now, was that the book agent I have wanted me to write something that was going to be more popular, at least in his eyes, and make more money and be something that would be one of these kind of quick reads that is popular for 6 months and then people forget about it. You see these kind of books all the time where people write something and it's it becomes sort of a fad and everybody's interested in it, and then you never hear about it again. It's like some new strategy to improve your life or some new strategy to increase your career success or some better way to run your business, and then it eventually just vanishes and goes into the used book used book stands. Whereas I said to him, I want something that is going to be meaningful and helps change people's lives and make them better. And of course, he didn't see all the dollar signs in that. So it's interesting, but like it comes from my heart. It doesn't come from, this sort of practical sense of what's good for me. So when I look at people that I've studied, I think Sam Walton is founded Walmart, is very interesting because he talks about the fact that he loved to do retail, and he said, every day, I'm excited about doing it. And when he talked about doing retail, what he was excited about was when he first started his business, he had one retail store or a couple of retail stores before, Walmart became this billion-dollar company. And he would drive all over Arkansas, this small state where he lived, looking for things that he could buy for his store to sell in his store. So he's always looking for bargains and interesting items. And then he said and so he loved to do that. And the other part of it was that he loved to figure out, once he bought something he was going to sell in the store, how to display it. So when people came in the store, they'd immediately see it and be interested in buying it. So, and as it shows in the slide, this is absolutely passionate about this. He said, I think about it every day. I think about how to do that. So, many of us aren't lucky enough always to have work that we feel that passionate about, but because we also have economic necessities and we have to earn a living and take care of our families. And so I think, but it's certainly something to think about and something to strive for, because even if you're working in a particular organization, it's useful to think about, well, is there another department or is there another type of job in this organization that I would feel more passionate about doing than the particular job that I have? And because you're already in the organization, you can make the sort of connections to do that. Bill Gates, who founded Microsoft, is absolutely obsessed with computers since he was in 8th grade. He and his co-founder were just always writing software just to make up, kind of solve strange problems that they came up with. They would write software for. And in the PowerPoint, you can see this is a picture of him at his computer in 8th grade. And then using computers was hard. I think they had to use the teletype to print things out, and it was very sort of primitive thing, but they were obsessed with it. And another interesting thing is Bill Clinton, who loved to campaign. So even when his wife was decided to run for office after he was no longer president, he was right out there campaigning. I think he liked to campaign much more than Hillary Clinton. He thought this was great. And yeah, he's very engaging. A friend suggested that I send him a copy of my book, because he's in my book. And talking about his way he kind of engages with people, he wrote me a thank you letter on White House paper. And so I was amazed that he took the time, because of the fact that I'm sure he had many demands on his time when I sent him a copy of my book. But it's his whole desire to engage with people. I think that is really one of his passions. But the thing that I think is, if you sit back and you think about what you do and how you spend your time, if you think about the fact that you'll work maybe 40 hours a week for 40 years, that's 80,000 hours that you will be spending at your job. And so I call it the 80,000 hour rule. And I think it's important to think about, as when you get towards the end of your life or the end of your career, was it something that fit with your strengths? Was it something that you were really passionate about? Because, we only have one life, and we're only given a certain time on this planet. And the question is, as you look back on your life, is 80,000 hours something that when you think about it, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to spend. I'm sort of laughing at this screen. I've looked at it many times, and I see I made a typo. It's on the top where I said, great leaders know the 80,000 hour rule. And the reason I'm laughing is that one of my weaknesses is that I endlessly make typos. And so you have to know everybody has their weaknesses. So the important thing is that you need to think about what you're passionate about and what really kind of energizes you. And as Jeffrey Bezos says, it's this burning thing. It has to come from your heart. It's not something that you learn. It's not something that you can teach someone. And I'm sure you've had people who've worked for you and done jobs for you, or people you've worked with who, they just didn't have any passion for it. They just wanted to get it done. They just wanted to get it over with. So that's something you can also look for inside of you. So next thing I was going to talk about was that great leaders, people who become great leaders, know where they're going, but they have just a direction. The life is so complex that it's very hard to actually carefully plan out your life, because you don't know the opportunities that are going to occur. You don't know the crises that are going to occur, and there's a lot of unpredictability in life. I think the coronavirus has really introduced us to how unpredictable the world can be. We have climate change that makes life very unpredictable. And even, so you have to be open to the fact that your journey through life is not going to be in a straight line. And no matter how hard you try to make it a straight line, it's just not going to happen. So you have to be open to forks in the road. Sometimes you won't like those forks, and sometimes there will be forks that can lead you to a better opportunity. So, you know, if you have this sort of narrow way of looking at the world, that and you don't see the opportunities, then you may miss out on things. And so most of the people I studied didn't really, they knew where they wanted to go, or they knew what they loved to do, but they didn't exactly know how it was going to unfold. They didn't know what was going to happen. And Miss Lakeisha, if I'm saying her name right, you know, she talks about how her life has kind of unfolded and different opportunities have occurred. And, you know, she's ended up doing different kinds of businesses that she never expected. You know, it was just sort of serendipitous that she ended up getting involved in the oil business. So other people like Sam Walton, he wanted to do retail, but he had no intent to make $1 billion business out of it. He just liked having a store, and he was quite content with that. And he wasn't really interested in money. He wasn't really interested. He just thought it was fun, and and so it just kind of unfolded in front of his eyes, and he kept opening stores, but very slowly. He didn't do it in a big rush like people do now. He just sort of opened stores, you know. He kept growing and growing and growing. And Donna Shirley, she knew she wanted to be involved in, you know, sending spaceships out to explore the planet, or not the planet, but the universe. And so, but she never knew exactly how that was going to unfold. And sometimes the opportunities she got, she really didn't seek them. They were sort of unexpected, but she always kind of kept taking these opportunities that came up because they were part of where she wanted to go. So I want to give you a story of how important it is to keep your options open. And I hope you don't mind if I have a sip of tea and while I'm going, because it's early here and I haven't had my tea yet. So excuse me. And also, excuse me for my voice. I filmed a 2-hour video yesterday. And so I was talking for like 3 or 4 hours. So the important thing is that since we don't know how the world's going to unfold, that you always should be open to everything that's going on in your world around you. And I think the story of Richard Branson is really interesting because when he was a child, his family, I don't know, he was 5 or 6, and his family went to the seashore for a 2-week or fortnight holiday. And while he was there, his Auntie Joyce said, oh, you know, I'll give you, I don't know how much it was at that point, maybe a shilling, if you learn how to swim when we're at the seashore. And so he was out there trying to swim the whole time for the 2 weeks they were on holiday. And he had no success. He kept dropping like a rock. And so finally their holiday came to the end, and the whole family was packing up. And as you may know, having been a former British colony, you know, there was also, it was the whole family was there, his aunts and uncles and so on. So anyway, his Auntie Joyce said to him, she said, well, don't worry, you can learn how to swim next year when we go on holiday. And so they were driving home, and his father was driving, and he was sitting in the back. And they were driving down this long hill, and all of a sudden, Richard Branson said, stop the car, let me out. And so as you know, with children, if they need to get out immediately, they may be sick, or you may have a crisis on your hands. So his father, of course, pulled over, and they jumped out of the car, ran over, and it turned out there was a stream just at the bottom of the hill. So he jumped out of the car, ran over there, and he jumped into the stream and started trying to swim. And he's, you know, he's like paddling along, he's sinking, his family's worried, thinking, oh my God, he may be about to drown. And because he didn't seem to be having much success, they're wondering if they should hop in and rescue him. And then all of a sudden his foot hit a rock and he pushed off, and suddenly he was learning he could swim. And but the point of the story is that we often get stuck in our plan. We think that, okay, we have a plan and this is how we're going to go about accomplishing what we want to accomplish. We want to, you know, we've got it all mapped out and this is the route we're going to take. But once you have a rigid plan, it closes your mind to opportunities. And what I've seen in people who become successful and build successful careers, that they never have a rigid plan. They just have this sort of general idea of where they want to go. So when you have this kind of openness to what's going on in the world around you, you know, you see opportunities you don't expect. If you look at someone like Steve Jobs, you know, when he first designed the Apple computer, and he came up with this, he was the first one to come up, you know, with using a mouse and having icons on the screen. And, you know, he hadn't really planned that out, how he was going to create the interface. But he happened to go to Xerox, which was a big company in the United States at that point, and they were doing research, and they developed that system that we all see on our computers, where you use a mouse and you have icons and so on. And when he saw that, he was like, this is brilliant. This is what I'm going to use in my computer. And yet, you know, it wasn't planned, but it made the whole difference in his computer and how easy it was to use. So, but another thing that I find interesting is in organizations and companies, you can also see how limiting this, when people don't keep their options open, it's incredibly limiting. Because I always find it, my sister worked for the University of Pennsylvania, and every year she'd have to come up with a budget, and then she would have to send it over to the, you know, the financial area of the university, and they would decide how much money they would get. But I always thought that incredibly odd, because if you give people $100,000, they'll spend $100,000. They'll find a way to spend that when you give them a budget. If you instead gave them a challenge where, you know, see how much money you can save, or how efficiently or how effectively you can do something in your company, then of course they would, and maybe we'll give you a bonus if you save us more money. Yeah, then people, they kind of start looking around. They'd say, oh, you know, maybe we could buy this more cheaply, or maybe this is a more efficient way of doing something. So this whole idea of kind of keeping your mind open to possibilities that you can't anticipate or expect, I think is both good for running a business. It's for navigating anything in life. We can't know everything. We can't know all the options ahead of time that are available to us. But too often, you know, people have sort of rigid plans. And, you know, one of the people who really sort of followed that philosophy is Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon. He's always experimenting, coming up with ideas and saying, well, maybe this will work, maybe that'll work. And he says sometimes, you know, these things fail, but, you know, he's always kind of open to different kinds of possibilities. And I think when you look at your jobs and you think of your career, sometimes we get too worried about being trying to make our world too secure. But people who succeed really kind of, in many cases, keep their options open. So what's important to remember is that people who become great leaders, they know where they're going. They know where they're going, but they don't usually have a detailed plan. And you know, keeping your mind open for opportunities is incredibly important. So these are some of the things that I want to summarize, and which I talked about before was last week, is that, you know, great leaders, they know what they're really good at. They know their small talents. They know their weaknesses, and they avoid their weaknesses. And they have this kind of big picture goal. So the other important thing is that we do not work alone in this world. No one's an island, and that we need other people to succeed. And so it's very important to know how to give help to others and to get help from other people. And no one that I've studied has succeeded alone. You know, other people have helped them, other people have partnered with them. So, and unfortunately in the media today, we get this impression that, you know, oftentimes in a company or anything that is accomplished, we get this impression that the person did it all by themselves. And people become sort of the figurehead for an accomplishment, I guess is the way to say it. I mean, you can look at it in everything. You can look at, let's say, someone who's a successful musician, or look at someone like Lady Gaga, who was a very popular American musician. And when she has productions and sings and so on, she has this fabulous kind of productions with, you know, stage filled with all sorts of people and design and so on. And so you tend to think of her as the star of this performance. And yet it turns out that much of her success is due to this man that she teamed up with, who really did her publicity and a lot of the technology and so on, and is who really made her successful, who really made a difference in her career. But we never hear about this person. You know, we see the person who's out front, that's right, visible to us. But to do anything in this world, you really need other people. And so one of my favorite quotes is Sam Walton's, which is, one person seeking glory doesn't accomplish much. And I think we all have to remember that it's not all on our shoulders, that we need other people and they can be incredibly helpful. So Bill Gates, who founded Microsoft, the idea for Microsoft actually came from his partner, Paul Allen. The idea for Microsoft was not Bill Gates's idea. And it actually started at Harvard, in Harvard Square, because one night Paul Allen was in Harvard Square, and they don't have it anymore. It's like a landmark. Everybody knew this newsstand that existed in the middle of Harvard Square. And it was open really late. You could go in there and you could browse through magazines. So Paul Allen was browsing through a magazine one night, because he was not at Harvard, but Bill Gates was at Harvard at that point. And he discovered, and it's interesting, I'm not sure if it was popular electronics or popular mechanics, because I've actually read two different, in my research, I found that some people say it was popular in mechanics, some people say it was popular in electronics. But the thing is, there was an article, and this was in the 70s, about the first personal computer. And so at that point, people just ran these huge computers. And, they had to have these rooms that were cooled to a certain area, but they were gigantic. The computers took up the entire room. Anyways, but he looked at that article and he was like, one day, and this is like 20 years before people really started to have personal computers, he looked at it and said, one day, people, everyone will have a personal computer. And he had always wanted to convince Bill Gates to get into the computer business and for them to start a company. And that's where it started, it was Paul Allen's idea. And he was really the driving force for the first part of Microsoft, because he was the one that always could see the future and always, came up with the ideas, because he was always reading technical magazines and so on. So he could see, he was very good at kind of guessing where the world was going. And so he was critical to its success. Mrs. Alakija, when she talks about her success, she always talks about her family and how incredibly instrumental they've been in her success. And that even though she's the person you see out front, she, obviously couldn't do it without her family and their support. So again, who we look at as the leader or the figurehead is often just the person that the media likes to promote, and not necessarily the person who actually is always, key, or is maybe just part of a whole team of people. Another example is Warren Buffett, who's a very famous American investor, and he gets lots of publicity. He's supposedly, this brilliant investor. Well, it turns out he has a partner, and he discusses everything that he does with his partner, who is this brilliant investor, who went to Harvard Law School and supposedly extremely bright, extremely smart, but he never seeks publicity. He doesn't like publicity. And, there's lots of people like that. So Warren Buffett's the one who goes out and talks to the media and popularizes his business. The same with Alibaba. Jack Ma, or Ma Yun, as the Chinese say. He has a business that's Alibaba is very similar to Amazon, you probably know. But his business was in shambles. It was falling apart until he met Joe Tsai. He wasn't incorporated. He didn't have funding. His business was, just sort of strewn together because he's not really a businessman. What he is he's extremely charismatic. And he's like the Pied Piper. If people want to follow him, they want to be around him. He just energizes people. And so when Joe Tsai joined him, he incorporated the business. It wasn't incorporated. He set up all the shareholders and, who was going to be part of the business. And then he went out and he helped get funding for him. And so, again, our ideas often, and I think this happens to us more as women, because, as a woman, you grow up and you're in charge of the household, okay? Yeah. The children don't do what they're supposed to, or your husband doesn't do, isn't helpful. We take over and we make sure it gets done. But we don't get credit for that. And And so we sort of just end up sometimes being, the behind the scenes helper. And even successful women, it happens to, they might, out in their career, they may be highly recognized for what they do, but at home, they're the person that gets things done. When somebody forgot to buy something for dinner, they're the ones who figure out how to solve the problem. And so I think, we don't get recognized. People don't recognize us that we're needed. But I think sometimes, a lot of times it's the women that really get things done. And women know, I think maybe more so than men, that they need others. But I do think there's this whole thing about how, and you do need others. It's like that we need to remember that our success does not come alone. Though my point is, though, that sometimes I think men are less aware of this than women are, that they need other people. And I think the other thing is to not be worried about people who are smarter than you or people who know how to do something better than you, because as Oprah Winfrey has talked about, she likes to have people who are smarter than her around her. Because it's really helpful. And there, as I talked earlier, everyone has their strengths. Everyone has their weaknesses. And one reason to know that you have your weaknesses is because you then know that you want to have people who will help you, who can do what you can't do. And so it's very important to think, okay, I'm not any good at doing that. I need to have someone here who can do that. And to not feel, some people feel like if they're in charge, they have to be able to do everything and they need to be good at everything. And what I found with people who become, successful leaders is that they know, hey, I can't do that. I need someone else to do that. And they don't feel like they're somehow, or they look less important and so on if they can't do it. They're very comfortable with it. Whereas other people you see who want to sort of feel like they can do everything. And they're often the people who get things in trouble. But the important thing, though, is to remember to give back to people. And so one reason I like Jack Ma on UN is the fact that when he incorporated his company, he started his company, and he knew nothing about technology. He was never good at technology. He could barely get into university because he couldn't pass his mathematical exams. And so, but what he did was these people came and worked for him for almost no money at all at first. And he gathered this group of people who just wanted to be around him. It was exciting. Technology was developing. So when he incorporated, he made the 18 students who were part of his business, he made them shareholders in Alibaba. And you don't always see that. In other words, he was like, these people have helped me be successful. I'm going to recognize them. So the other thing is that people who become great leaders is they really pay attention to other people's talents. They're always on the lookout. They're like detectives. They're always looking for people who might have small talents that would be helpful to them. And they also make good use of talent in their companies and in their business. So they're always kind of watching people. And Steve Jobs was incredibly good at that. He was not that good at technology. So in order to make his products work, he needed people who could solve technical problems that he couldn't. So, and the first computer he developed was built by Steve Wozniak, his partner, because Steve Jobs knew he was a brilliant engineer, much better than him. And so, and he recognized that. And he says, you build the computer, but I'm good at influencing people. So I'm going to go out and find ways to buy parts cheaply for us. And I'm going to sell it and negotiate with people because that was what he was good at. So, but he was always kind of attuned to that. He watched people. He was on top of that. So the important thing is to know, to acknowledge you need help. You can't do it all. And to be always looking at other people and seeing what's best in them. It's not only about knowing your talents, but recognizing the talents. And also, I always think it's really important to appreciate other people's talents, no matter how small what they're doing for you is. And I certainly feel that's very important when you're working with people. But one of the things I try to do wherever I am, if I go in the grocery store and somebody does something really well, or they're really fast at the checkout stand, you know, when they're doing your goods, and I always like to tell people, I like to watch how people do things, and I always like to tell people, wow, you know, you're really fast at checking out my goods. You know, and people are always amazed when you say it to them, because it's amazing how many people don't know how good they are at things. And sometimes people get taken advantage of because they don't realize how good they are. So great leaders, I think, are people who always pay attention. I want to do one other thing. I'm trying to figure out, because I think this is very important, and I don't want to run out of time here. And so I'm wondering if I can display, it's a technical person here. I wanted to display something else on the screen for a few minutes. Let me see if I can stop.
Okay. You can minimize that, or you share your window so you can minimize.
If I minimize it, well, okay, I'll minimize this. Oops, where's my share the screen? I had to put my glasses on to do this. Your sharing is paused. Can I, oh, new share. All right, let me see if I can find this. Ah, here it is. Thank you. Okay. The other thing is very important, and is what is called, I call organizational awareness. And what I see in people's being successful is that they know how to build power within organizations. And I think Margaret Thatcher, the first female prime minister of the UK, she was brilliant at this. And so the important thing is that in any organization, there's always a sort of power game going on in terms of how far you can go. It's just not about doing a good job. It's also about knowing how to build power within that organization and get recognized for the value that you add. So one of the things that's important to realize, and this is for people who are just starting their career, is that we always start out with personal powers. And as you can see on the diagram, we all can control how much effort we put into something. And we can all be attractive. And attractiveness is not about how you look, but it's about how you interact with people, how kind you are, thoughtful. And we all know people who, wouldn't necessarily win a beauty contest, but they have such a kind, nice personality that they're very attractive. And so that's something we control. And the other thing is we can control our expertise. We can go back to school, we can take more courses, we can read more. But when you're thinking of an organization, you need to ask yourself, is this of value to the organization? So if you look at someone like Margaret Thatcher, You know, she really built her career on effort. She worked incredibly hard, particularly when she was first, always. She was known for her effort, her ability to work for hours. So part of the things that helped her early in her career was this enormous effort that she put out. When she was in first, when she first won her first seat to Parliament, she'd run 2 times before, but when she was running for Parliament, I mean, she toured Dartford, the area she was ultimately elected from. She went and met with everyone. She would go to people's houses. She would learn about their families. She would sit down and have a cup of tea with people. And even after she was elected to Parliament, she hand wrote thank you notes to everybody who helped her. And she also focused on making herself attractive. It was interesting. They had a program there for women who were running to teach them how to dress. So they would dress in a way that was attractive, not sexy, but attractive and well put out. And if you remember, she always made herself sort of physically attractive, but in a way, she wasn't as much attractive as a person. People did not like her that well. So, so it's even better than to focus on your physical attractiveness if you can have the kind of attractiveness where people like you and they want to be around you. So this is another power. These are powers we have inside ourselves. We control those. And the other thing is it's up to us to figure out how much expertise we want to bring to the workplace. So if you're in an organization, these are your tools that you start with. You start with these, and you can use these then. And what people who become successful do is and leaders is they use these 3 basic things to, one, create visibility, so that people in power will recognize, you know, if you make a lot of effort, what you want to do is you want people in power to realize that you're making an important contribution to the organization. And the other thing is you create a track record. You want to create a track record so that you have a reputation as someone who's trustworthy, as you're the kind of person who get things done. But with visibility, one of the things you need to do is to make sure that you do things in the organization or volunteer to do things or try and be in a position where people will notice you. Oftentimes, and I think it happens more to women, they work really hard within an organization, but no one really knows they exist. So you need to think of ways. Sometimes you can join important committees in your organization. You can read the promotional materials and see what's important to the people who are at the top of the organization. What are the things they really care about? And if they have a committee or something like this, you can maybe join that committee where you get to meet people who are higher level up above you, so that if there's opportunities that open, they will know that you exist, or you can go to them and say, you know, I'm really interested in this new job opening that's coming. But it's very important to think of ways that you can kind of draw attention to yourself. And sometimes for women, I think we don't do that enough. And maybe the problem is we often get attention just because we're women and men are attracted to us. But we don't always think about the fact that we need attention in terms of the organization within which we work. Another way I did it, and Margaret Thatcher was very good about this. She became a really good debater. And when she was in Parliament, you know, she would get up and debate against other people, and it brought her a lot of attention, the fact that she was a good debater. And so everybody knew who she was. and she worked so hard, and she would spend hours and hours working. And because they didn't have offices, she'd be working in the cloakroom. And so people would see her there at all hours working away. So she got a visibility in terms of being a very hard worker. When I was a graduate student at Harvard, and I actually didn't do this intentionally, whenever I met, a senior faculty person or something, or anyone, and they would say, well, how is your dissertation going? Or you would talk about, it would be like, how are you? And I would always give them a press report on how good my work was going. And say, oh yeah, we're doing these great things in our department, or something like this if you're working in a business. But also, you can get visibility by trying to be involved in the projects in your department or your area that are very important to the people at the top. This is another way to get good visibility, is volunteer, say to your boss, I would like to work on this project, but pick the project and one where it'll get attention from people at higher levels. The other thing that's important is you start to get more power in an organization and you move up. Oops. Trying to move this down here. Is as you get, what you really want to get is move up and get what are called positional powers. So, and there, once you get them, you want to be in positions where you're central within the organization. So, because when you have a position that's central in an organization, you know everything that's going on in the organization. So that's a source of power. And centrality can also allow you to be able to meet the people within the organization. And that's why it's good to kind of see if you can get engaged in projects or volunteer for things that are important to people who, at higher levels, who can promote you, is because, it's a way of sort of building power. The other thing that most people forget about is when you're trying to move up within an organization, is that there's certain tasks that are in an organization that are very relevant to the organization. There's certain tasks that aren't that important. They're just administrative. They have to get done. But there's certain things that have great relevance. So for Margaret Thatcher, she actually worked at this. She got all this sort of expertise, and she signed up for courses, and she became a really good debater. And she got a lot of it, and she would go and participate in debates and things like this in the party. And then when she was in Parliament, she got a lot of attention because she debated issues for her party that were really important to the party. And she would spend hours preparing for them. She would know every detail of what she was arguing. So she took effort and she put it in a place where it had relevance, and it was doing an important function for the organization. So in some cases, if you don't have that opportunity in what your job is, you can volunteer to do something, or go to your boss and say, I think this is an important thing for the organization, and I would like to do more of this. But as you move up, it's all about, making sure you're in central positions. Because when you're in a central position, you know more what's going on in the organization. But relevance, I think, is very important. If you look at any organization, there's certain positions that are relevant and those that aren't. And in the United States, if you're let's say, in human resources, people in human resources never get promoted to become the CEO. They never go up the chain to become the CEO in an organization. They draw people more from finance or sometimes marketing, because those are the areas that produce money. So, being involved in something that's relevant is important also in terms of what part of the organization you work in. But, and you also want to acquire more of these positional powers where you have power to make decisions. In other words, if you're looking at a new job or taking a promotion, you want to think about, well, how much power am I going to have? Am I going to be able to make decisions in that position? Because ultimately, you want to take all of these things and, starting with what you bring to the table, which is your effort, your attractiveness, your expertise, and create this track record, this visibility, so you get more positional powers within the organization and more formal authority, which is, puts you eventually in a very powerful position within the organization, because you then make decisions for the organization that are important to its success or its failure. Uh, However, when you get to this point, you also need to remember that in order to retain it, you have to uh, do what is often called, you need to exchange currencies for people. When people do good things for you, you need to recognize them, or people below you, give them opportunities to move within the organization. Uh, you need to give people credit where credit's deserved. So there's many kind of currencies that you can also trade, both as you're moving up through the structure and also um, uh, maintaining your position. One of the reasons Margaret Thatcher was eventually ousted out of her position was that she never helped any women out. She never promoted women's careers within the organization, within the government. And she got very arrogant, and she just wanted all the formal authority to herself, and she didn't recognize other people. She didn't give them credit. She didn't listen to them. And so as you get a position with more authority, you have to remember that you're always trading currencies with people above you, and also you need the people underneath you to support you, so that you need to um, give them opportunities and and do things for them. In other words, this whole kind of an exchange. But I like this kind of diagram because it shows how you can build power and have more opportunity to express what is best in you within an organization, if you think about how organizations work and how you need to build power. I realize I'm going over and that we're running out of time, but I hope this also gives you some ideas about how to increase your authority within an organization, how to have more impact, and how important it is to understand how people build power. And I don't know if it's true uh, for you, but certainly in the United States, um, men follow this model all the time. It's a type of model that they use to build power. And as we know, very few women, at least in this country, get to the top. There's not an increase in female leaders at all. And certainly in corporations and places like that. So I hope this is giving you some more ideas on how you can uh, build your success in the workplace. It doesn't necessarily have to be the workplace. It could be in your church. It can be anywhere where you can use this model to build power and have influence. And I'm not sure I even like the word, well, word power, because what I like to think of it more is a place where you can use your special strengths and who you are to make a bigger difference in your world. So it can be within a charity, it can be anywhere, because we really need people to step forward. And I think women, as I started initially, when women are getting power, they are making an important difference in this world. And we've seen that with the coronavirus. And so I think men are mucking it up a bit because they're so busy posturing and showing that they're the man that they often don't. Whereas women are about getting things done and doing them well and making sure that things run efficiently. And I think we really need that power in this world. We don't need these men, prancing around, showing how important they are. Which, when you look in a lot of countries, those are the men who are running things in many countries. It's all about them. It's all about how important they are. And I think with women, we have a lot to offer. And so I encourage all of you to seize as much power as you can because we need you. So, I hope that some of the things I've told you will help you grow and realize that the world needs our talents. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And I certainly hope that all of you do great things. So I'll take questions if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Myra White. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I can see Nitin. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. She's raising her hand. I guess she has a question. If you have a question, please feel free to just use the raise hand feature. It's on the participant section of the application, and we'll give you the access to speak. So Nitin, you have a question, you can unmute yourself and speak. So I'm not sure, maybe he or she is not there. Any other question or comments? So I'm not sure there's any question.
Okay.
Or maybe is anyone that needs any clarification? Okay, we have Mobile and Legiwa. You can go ahead and meet yourself, please, and speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Dr. Myra White. Very good series of presentations. Thank you. So just a quick one from me. In the course of your research, have you found anything that sort of alludes or refutes the fact when you hear people saying women don't work well with women? So how does that tie into the career aspect? Is that something you've observed, or if it is, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. And actually, I can tell you of an interesting study. There's a woman that wrote this book in a different voice at Harvard a number of years ago. And what she discovered, she talks about a study of watching children or young girls and young boys play basketball, and how when there's a problem, or maybe one of the young boys commits a foul or does something inappropriate, all the other boys get mad and they get angry at him, and he'll walk off crying or something. But then he'll go off for about 5 or 10 minutes off the court, and then he'll come back and they'll all accept him back on the court. Whereas what they discovered that when there would be a conflict with the girls when they were playing, that when they had a conflict, they would end the game. Someone would take the ball and they'd all go home after they had this conflict. And I think my experience has been too that women seem to sometimes, instead of realizing that they need to work together, they sometimes want to compete with each other. And I found that I've had more difficulty, not at least working with American women, not with women from Europe and other places like that. I find that are Chinese women, because I do a fair amount of work with the Chinese, but I found that at least in the United States, that women can be very competitive with each other, and they sometimes resent the fact that so for example, if I have to deal with women who are administrators, I find that I have much more difficulty than dealing with women who have equal status to me, with me as an academic. And so I think in some places, women have a lot of resentment towards women who they see have figured out a way to succeed. Not all women, but I see that somewhat in the US, that women end up competing with each other. And some people say that it starts at a younger age because women compete with women, young girls, when women, they compete for men when they're younger, and that competition for men then ends up extending into the workplace. And so, but the one place where I find there's none of that are women who play sports. Because when you play a sport, you realize that you don't need to like, I think liking is important. You don't need to like that woman that you're playing with on the team. You can appreciate the fact that they're scoring a lot of goals. And so any woman that's played a sport, I love working with women that have played sports because they have this attitude, well, we just need to score goals. And it doesn't need to be your best friend to score goals. But I think it's, so if you have daughters, I encourage you to have them play sports where they learn to appreciate people. You may not want to spend your time with the person who's, one of your teammates off the court, but when they're on the court and they score goals, you appreciate them. You learn to appreciate them rather than to see them as competitors. So I don't know why it is, whether it's, but I see it more in some cultures than others.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Myra. I think that's you've really hit the nail on the head. Probably has to also do with our nature as women, and being able to realize the certain bias that we have, and series such as this that help to bring that awareness would also be good. I think it's really good for women to realize there's no rule that says that there can't be more than one woman at the table. So the fact that you have somebody else at the table, you should actually leverage on that strength and the differences that you all bring, rather than compete and say, oh yes, now I have another woman here. And then, so thank you very much for that. I just wanted to ask if there was something you were seeing in terms of academia. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
And Demola, you go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Sorry, let me correlate a point and give kudos to President. I thought that I was just going to listen out. I never realized I was going to learn so much from Amira's presentation. I have seen that I could deepen some of the things I've been doing over the years and change a few things for the better. it also helps me to coach others on some of the things she mentioned, especially with references to those individuals, essentially recognizing every little assistance. And I think every little contribution. And I think it is important for us to realize that we better work in a group harmoniously than try to work in silos, trying to do everything. Um, I think this is quite incisive. Thank you, Myra. Thank you, APWEN. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Engineer Patricia?
Thank you. Myra, thank you once again this weekend. Your teachings are very insightful. I have a few comments concerning the question from engineer, oh, forgive me. Oh, yeah, Bolande. And my comments to that statement is very simple. I encourage every woman to be comfortable in her skin. Once you're comfortable in your skin and your head is raised up, you don't see the other woman as a competitor. Rather, you see her as a collaborator. I believe that women need to learn to collaborate with each other, whether you're a woman or a man. We need to have the spirit of collaboration. That way we can move the world forward. Be comfortable in your skin. You're uniquely made by God, and that's who you are. But also learn to respect one another. Respecting one another is very important, whether you're small, big, tall, short, white, yellow, green. Respect one another. And I think when we learn to do all of that, you'll be amazed how far we can go together. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Me too. Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And to value each other, you know, it's like, it's probably in part that people, maybe women, we grow up and we don't feel that valued. Often we feel that men are more valued than we are. And that may cause resentment. But yeah, we need each other. And actually, you know, I find that when I do work with women, or I've worked with them on sports teams, it's great. You know, it's like women are pretty amazing. I think often women don't realize how amazing they are.
Any questions, comments? You know, there are so many comments going on in the chat section, so I will advise everyone listening to as well read up what's happening in the chat section, you know, and compete instead of collaborate instead of competing, and that's key. Engineer Bossede.
Thank you, Myra, for such an inspirational session. Please, I just want to ask about resilience and tenacity. With some of my interaction with men over time, I noticed that they have this values or this strength of putting in their resiliency and tenacity at play. And for us as women, I really don't see that coming up. Can you please use your experiential wealth of knowledge to do a little bit of analysis on why that is happening, or if you think it's not happening?
Can you elaborate a bit more? Because I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you asking, let me ask a question in return.
I'm asking about resilience and tenacity.
Do you think?
Yes, do you think it's is a plus to why men kind of get things done, or you see them coming up more than a woman?
Oh, do I see more effort and resiliency in men than women?
Yeah.
No, I see it the other way around. I see what I see. The problem is that women put forth enormous effort, but it's not recognized, which is why I put up this diagram with the power and how important it is to have visibility. Because I see women working really hard all the time. And often in the United States, you see women who really, the men above them couldn't function without their effort. And I also see women as being more resilient overall than men. And I actually sometimes, I'm trying to remember, but I thought I'd seen something physiologically, like that women actually even physically have more resilience than men. And one of the interesting things when I'm talking about the coronavirus is that because we have two X chromosomes, two X's, and men have an X and a Y, that we have stronger immune systems than men because we have, two sets of genes to fight things like viruses and things like that. But I see, women, I think have more resilience in many cases than men. I think though, also when it comes to resilience, it's the fact is that women are more honest about their feelings. They're more honest about expressing their emotions when things go wrong. And they can at times be much more dramatic than men. And I think that may mislead people to believe that women aren't as strong as men emotionally. But the strongest people I've seen have usually been women when it comes to resilience and both effort. And I remember a woman saying to me, it was such an interesting comment. My husband died when I was young. He had cancer. And I remember a woman coming up to me and saying, she said, if it had been you that had died, your husband wouldn't have been able to deal with it. And you see that too in when men lose a wife, they immediately go out and find another one. And whereas women, I don't think, women sort of, they persist, they just get on with it or they do what they have to do. So I kind of see it the opposite way. I know some of you may see it another way because that's partially my experience, is that women have more endurance and more ability to persist. And maybe there is a biological component because women have ultimately been the ones that have been critical to nurturing children. And so they, as a role, with regard, particularly when the children are very small, we feed our children with our bodies. So I don't know if you agree. I mean, do people agree with this, or people have other perspectives? Yeah. It's an interesting question.
Yes, I think the tenacity question is, I'm not sure if I can step in here. Buffett said...
Yes, you can do that. We have just a few minutes more.
Okay, Buffett said, all right. Buffett talked about resilience and tenacity. Maybe she was looking at the statistics that say that many women leave engineering earlier than men do. In that way, you might think it's because they're not tenacious, but it's because of the choices they have to make. So we're very strong. It's clear that we're very resilient. We can withstand a lot of pressure. But many times when women have to make a choice between work and home, they tend to choose home because they are nurturers and they want to nurture comfortably. That doesn't mean that they're not tenacious. It just means that they've made a choice. Another time, at other times, because we have ethical sensitivity. When a woman is in an organization where things are not being done right and having done all they know how to do, they might make a decision to step away from it, which might make it look as if they're not tenacious, but it's not that. It's just that women make decisions that have to do with deep things. And sometimes the decisions they make cost them a lot. They recognize that, but they still have to make those decisions because there's a lot more to gain by stepping away than by staying in there. I don't know if that answers some of Boss's questions, because I agree with Dr. Myra all the way. We're very, very resilient, very strong, but we move away sometimes. Thank you.
Yeah, good comments. I agree.
Thank you very much, Ma. APWEN President.
Thank you so much, Engineer Shegun. Dr. White, we are extremely grateful for this. I know the depth of what you have taught us because 3 years ago, Harvard charged me $2,500 to listen to this, to attend your class. So I know the value of what you have given us, particularly today about personal powers and currency and all that. And I also like you to know the caliber of people that we have on this platform today who have come to listen to you. Our association was founded 38 years ago, and some of the founding members, about 6 of them, are right here.
Oh, great.
Yes, one of them is the woman that just made some clarification about women being tough. Her name is Fumi Kadri. You know, we have some others. We have Beatrice Oduni. She's also a founding member. She joined 5 others to found this association 38 years ago. We have Engineer Monica Ujuku. She's also here. And some past presidents of this association, you know, Engineer Patricia Openeotili, Engineer Amusu. So many people. We have the chairman of the Women in Engineering of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. She's here. Her name is Yetunde Holloway. We have a past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers here. So many people who have come to listen to this, and we just can't be grateful enough. We have here the chairman of Overup, it's an international company, multinational building construction company. He's right here, Engineer Kunle Adebaju. And so many people who, and you can see the class, we are still over 100. They're just waiting. You can see how captivated they are. We appreciate this a lot, and we really don't know how to thank you. But as a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with our honor code certificate.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so this is presented to you, Dr. Myra White, for your excellent presentation on the path to leadership. It's a training that is offered on this our platform. We just can't thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And
so I will send this to you in the mail so that you can do it. Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to speak with you and to see so many strong, resilient women.
So I think we are fine. Engineer Shegun, you can please close the meeting.
Yeah. So thank you very much, APWEN President, Engineer Lola Ojelade, FNSE. Thank you, Dr. Myra White and other organizers, those who decided to be a part of this. You were here last week, and today also you're here. We want to appreciate you. We value your time, and thank you very much for being a part of this. We have learned so much. I'm sure there are so many men here. We have learned so much, and we are behind our women strongly, collaborating and not competing. Thank you very much, and do have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank you
lastly, I just saw Engineer Nkechi Sigwe. She's also one of the founding members. So we actually have like 4 of them logging on here.
Oh, great.
Great women who have stood with us and have made this association extremely great.
Well, thank you for inviting me,
Yes.
organizing it. It's been my
Have a
pleasure.
wonderful day. Have a wonderful day.